Hey everyone, welcome to Cutting Through the Noise, and this is Kassi and Kyle.
Cassie, how are you today?
Good.
Good. We're talking podcasts today.
Yeah, as we do a podcast.
Very meta of us
Yeah.
to be doing.
That's all we know.
We started a podcast just this year. So 2019, January, we had a goal, quarter one, of recording an entire season of a podcast.
Yeah.
And you might think, oh, they're definitely going to record it about marketing, which is what we're doing now.
Yeah.
But we actually want to get our feet wet with a totally different topic, and we chose first-time home buying.
Yeah.
And we did that because it's real estate in the office is something that we talk about. We're curious about it. You're kind of in the process of looking, checking out homes here in Missoula. And maybe even before that, the question is, well, why did you want to start a podcast?
Right.
We're a marketing firm.
Yeah.
And I found ourselves talking to clients and saying, hey, you should maybe advertise on podcasts. Or personally, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and the advertisements with live reads are meaningful. So I'm thinking there's something to audio. I thought I was the first one to say there's something to audio.
You're the first person ever.
Ever, yeah. So I sort of felt like podcasts now are like YouTube in 2011. Yeah. Meaning 2011 YouTube, there were a lot of videos. Lots of people making videos, lots of channels. And if you had said podcast or YouTube is it's already discovered, there's nothing more to explore here, you would have lost out on on huge opportunities in the last 9-10 years. So I think of podcasts as if they're YouTube in 2011.
Totally.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. I think people were really excited about the video content with YouTube, but now people enjoy podcasts because they can multitask.
Yeah.
And we're such a busy society that they can listen to a podcast while they do all of the other things they need to get done.
People brush their teeth and listen to podcasts.
Right. Yeah.
The barrier is a little lower.
Drive to work, listen to podcasts.
Driving on the subway, because you don't have to, your attention isn't focused on a device, watching a video, which I feel like is dangerous anyway.
Yeah, when you're driving.
Especially driving, maybe walking. And yeah, it feels a little bit more passive. I guess it is more passive than video.
Yeah.
And we brought up some stats. So before the episode, we're like, let's just thumb through some different stats here. And there's a ton of information about podcast listeners and their behaviors. And one other note about podcasts, in 2000, let's say 2000, 2010, 2009, people were being retargeted for the first time.
Right.
They'd go to a website, they'd look at a pair of shoes, they'd leave that website and they'd see those shoes and say, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't see those pair of shoes following you everywhere and you're not annoyed by them, it's sort of like, why aren't these shoes not following you? So as any good marketing firm, we're always looking for not like what is the next trend or fad, but where are users and where are customers' attention going toward?
What's actually sticking for them? Yeah.
Right. Like, where are they spending their time? And it's not clicking on ads.
Yeah.
Like, less than 1% of people will click on a display ad or a retargeting
Really?
ad. Very low.
That's super low.
Yeah. And you see it with email.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, hey, we try to run really efficient email campaigns. And even then, on a great day for like our most well thought out email campaigns, like, what kind of open rates are you seeing?
Maybe like 10%, maybe. That's like
maybe
pretty good.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and then like a 4, 5, 6% click rate.
Sure.
If you have something really enticing
out
on
of
there.
Everybody that opens, you're saying.
Right, out of thousands of people.
Thousands of people. Sure. So so podcasts, they're opt-in, people download them, they listen to them. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why we want to get involved. Learn the mechanics behind it. Cass, you got any favorite stats up there that we found?
One thing that I think is interesting is, half of the U.S. population at least has listened to podcasts, and out of that, 1 in 4 of them listen to it weekly. So once you get into podcasts, that is, a high number of people that are continuing to opt in to that specific type of media.
It's almost like part of your daily routine.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, personally, I know I wake up, usually listen to a podcast as I get ready to come to work. Right. And as I drive to work, I listen to one, and, that's kind of my morning routine. Yeah, on my phone. Yep.
It's not like NPR doesn't count as a podcast.
Sometimes I listen to NPR, but yeah, usually I like to have a little more control over the topic. I think that's what podcasting gives people is, they might listen to the same, NPR information on on their way to work in the radio, but when they're on their device, they can choose a topic of an episode.
Sure.
Over something else. Yeah.
I'm looking at one that says, this is from podcastinsights.com. It's kind of an infographic.
Yeah.
80% of podcast listeners listen to all or most of each podcast episode.
Yeah.
Which you think about YouTube.
Right.
You know, we look at some YouTube stats. 25% view through rate, meaning that they watch maybe a quarter of the video before they see, you might also like, and I think I would like that. And here I go. I'm going to click on that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure where I saw this, but a little while ago when we were researching podcasts, I saw something that people are even pretty likely to listen through, you know, an ad that's at the end of an episode. So even once the episode's finished, people will continue to listen to that ad. Yeah. Which is interesting.
Do you fast forward through ads in the middle of podcasts?
Sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes I fast forward through them if I'm just, you know, sitting on the couch listening and I'm really intent on listening. But if I'm driving or multitasking, then I just listen right through it. Yeah. Which I guess is most of the time.
Most of the time. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like podcast advertisements the bar is a little higher. And usually if it's a live read, meaning, you know, you're listening to somebody because you've opted into them. And maybe they're talking about travel. Maybe they're talking about business, but you respect them in some way enough to listen to their insights. Yeah. If it's a educational podcast. Which I feel like a lot of people listening to this podcast would be interested in other educational podcasts.
Right. Yeah.
So they're talking about, hey, use MailChimp. I've used MailChimp before. Here's a discount code. Right. It's great. You can build lists and it's amazing. And then you're like, okay, well, I trust. And sometimes they'll even say, I don't talk about anything that I don't use myself. Yeah. Whether they're telling the truth or not, who knows? But I feel like they're telling the truth most of the time. That they've used the product, vetted it, and said, okay, I'm going to advertise for it.
Yeah, that's something interesting about podcasts is you hear the same person's voice and their opinions and, you know, kind of their quirks even when they laugh or make a snorting sound or something. Right. And you start to trust this person more than, you know, the people who receive my emails. They don't know it's me behind the email.
Or a display ad.
Yep. Yeah. So it doesn't seem very personal. Ad. Yep. And so that's why they are highly effective. I think there was a stat in here, Kyle, that we found that said people, or almost half of podcast listeners report buying something off of an ad they heard on a podcast.
That's interesting.
So that's like 1 out of 2 people that hear your ad could buy. Well, I guess out of all their ads.
That would be pretty sweet. Yeah. Like, let's advertise on podcasts.
Yeah.
Let's do it right 50%. Now. Maybe it's just that other channels.
They are likely to buy. I guess if you were to ask the same group of people how much they've purchased off of an email or a Facebook ad. Yeah, billboard. Yeah.
A bus,
TV
ad.
A
bus sign.
Right.
Like, never.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. So half of people that are listening to podcasts have purchased.
Purchase intent even. Like, okay, I'm interested. They discover a new product.
Yeah, for sure.
That's neat. It's targeted too. Like you can decide, I want to advertise on this podcast because I know, you know, I'm a travel company. Right. And this is a travel podcast. Unlike this is a Major League Sporting event. I'm going to advertise on it. And my dad's watching, your uncle's watching who like, hates to travel. Your grandma's watching because she's in the room, and it's like, well, okay, your target audience is definitely muddled. Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing is, like you were saying earlier, people are opting in to listen to this media. So, you know, it's not just a commercial on the radio because they have to listen to.
You're downloading, listening to 80% of it.
Yeah.
It's powerful. So we've actually then taken the podcast setup that we have here and brought it to some of our clients. Yeah. We call it Podcasts in a Box.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Talk about that a little bit. So let's use Scouts as an example here in Montana.
Yeah, so we work with the Scouts, Montana Council, Boy Scouts, I guess Boy Scouts, BSA, but BSA. Scouts of America. And we brought our Podcast in a Box to them to get some audio on what Scouts is all about and what it's like to be a Scout in Montana.
Interview their director, chief executive.
Yeah. You know, and we've received some listens on that. I'm sure a lot of listens on that that wouldn't have happened if it was written in an article. People would not have taken the time to read the article equivalent.
80% of an article. Yep. You know, if we just typed out our conversation in an interview, put it in a magazine, but it's easy listening. And
definitely.
It's cool because it's a new form of media and the barrier is low. Like we showed up, we set these things up. the mic, we just hit record, and boom, we were talking.
Yeah.
Just as if, I think we just did it right in their conference room.
Yeah.
And that's been a cool learning for us as a firm is, how do we increase the amount of services we have without spending $20,000 on a podcasting studio? And it works.
Definitely. And something else going into that recording specifically was we were thinking about who's, going to be listening to that or would like to receive this information. And again, if it was written in an article, the people that we were sort of reaching out to with that info, as parents and grandparents and people responsible for getting their children involved in those programs. And we know that those same exact people are the ones that are way too busy to, sit down and read an article because they're taking their kids to places because they're involved and, they have a lot on their plate. So we wanted to provide them with an easy way to listen. And that's what podcasts do.
It becomes an audio asset.
Yep.
For Scouts.
Yeah.
And now we can show that asset on Facebook. So it's an easy click off of Facebook. We can share it in an email.
Exactly.
So it provides a little more value. I think that's ultimately what the asset provided is value instead of just sign your kids up for Scouts.
Yeah.
Did you know that Scouts does these things? It's like, no, we're going to provide you with some value and we're going to talk you through how to get started, some of the risks of increased screen time.
Yeah.
We talk about all that stuff.
Yeah. So, Kyle, along our way with podcasts, we've also run into a few little hurdles that we've had to learn.
Yes.
Or, we've had to re-record a couple times. Or just recently we learned that the mics can be backwards.
Yes, the mics.
We had no idea.
You're seeing the mics in their normal state of Y.
State.
Yes. But we would, let's see if I can do this. It's going to be maybe not.
It's going to be a little squeaky.
Yeah. You'd be like, don't do that, Kyle. But basically it would sound like I was talking, back here and it wasn't working.
Yeah, so we had to learn that.
Somehow, I remember one episode, this isn't what's going on? I kept trying to move it.
Touching his mic. I'm like, Kyle, stop touching your mic.
But I couldn't. I could tell on my headphones.
Right.
And just a quick note on the equipment, or I guess even once you decide, okay, I'm convinced podcasting is something that I want to get into. I don't want to use podcasts in a box service. I want to record my own. The main thing is just to do it. I think there's never going to be a perfect time to say, okay, today is the day that we do all the research and all the things, and you can research yourself to death with this stuff. We found someone that knew what they were talking about. They referred us to a couple products that were middle of the road. Not the cheapest equipment in the world, not the most expensive equipment in the world. Stuff that's going to give us good quality, which is really key. And then we made the purchase. Yep. And we didn't have any money flowing through the doors from podcasting yet, but we knew that it was kind of an investment, right? And a learning, and we were going to take away a lot from it. Right. And then we recorded and we tinkered with the mics. I think we did some test recordings before we brought anybody to interview in.
Yeah, I think we did a couple. Yeah.
I hope we did.
Yeah, we did.
I wouldn't recommend not doing that, but definitely test the mics, get the audio. We use Audacity. Yep. It's an open source, free software. It comes with some limitations, but starting out, great tool. Yep, definitely. And like Kassi was saying, it works on both Mac and PC, so you can, if you have both in your office. And then we recorded. Yeah. So we had this audio file. Now we have to get this audio file into podcast form. Yeah. What was that process like? Yeah. So after the recording and sort of editing process, this was something I didn't really know, I guess, before we jumped into it, is that we needed to host our podcast somewhere. I thought that you could just upload it to iTunes and you uploaded it to Spotify and these different places. But really you needed to find a place where you can host that holds your podcast and then basically sends an RSS feed to all these different sites. iTunes,
Spotify,
Google Play, Spotify. And
There's
then we have some iHeartRadio, which do we
Podbean.
Do we get any downloads from those two?
I think so, yeah. There's actually
single digits.
Here, let me see where we have downloads right now from. I was just looking at our metrics. Looks like iTunes is about 50%, which I think is what normally you'd see in podcast data.
Okay. That's interesting. Stitcher, yeah. Yep. People use Stitcher.
Chrome, I don't really know what Chrome means.
Is that Googlebot?
Yeah. Well, there's also Googlebot, Chrome, Overcast, Chrome Mobile.
That must be just
Android.
Google Play, I would guess.
Yeah. Android, Mobile, Safari, Podbean. Oh, I'm sure when it says Mobile, Safari, maybe Chrome, that's people looking actually on our like Fireside website. So we decided to host our podcast on a service called Fireside. It provides metrics and allows you to upload your data, but also if you want, you can use it as your website. So people can click there and listen to your podcast. So that's where it is. And then, it's showing us that 14% of our listeners are other. So I'm not really sure. I think that's probably the Spotify, iHeartRadio.
Maybe they're finding us through like Ask Jeeves.
Yeah.
Yahoo search.
Bing.
Right. Bing.
And we have 99% of our listeners are from the U.S. However, there are 11 people who've listened from other.
Interesting. Other countries. Other
so there you
cool.
go.
Well, that's
We're
good
close
to
to Canada up here, so maybe.
Yeah, I bet some airwaves crossed over. Something. One thing, too, I wanted to mention about podcasts. Google recently, as of Q2 2019, announced that they would be serving podcasts in search results.
Oh, cool.
So originally, the OG Google was websites.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was like Google images. And you could search images, and then you could search videos, of course, with YouTube. Shopping. Now podcasts. If you search for your favorite podcast, there will be sort of that position 0, which is you don't have to click into any website to listen. It'll just be episodes.
Oh,
boom, boom, boom.
yeah.
It'll be 1 through 5.
Sure.
And you can just start clicking and playing.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I think that's another indicator that, hey, podcasts are not only here to stay, but also the access and attention that people spend on them. Google has a little more data than you and I, Cassie. So they're seeing, hey, a lot of people are searching for podcasts. Right. We're going to start making those searches relevant.
That is pretty cool.
And so the equipment and then promotion.
Yeah.
So we have a designer here. We're fortunate enough. We had him, Claire. She's amazing. We had her mock up like a couple quick logos for our closing day podcast, and then we just uploaded it to Fireside, right? And it's just sort of this is your Stitcher header, this is your iTunes header, this is your Google Play header.
It's pretty sweet. Yeah. It's
and
helpful.
Then here's the dimensions, and boom, and you go on. It looks like this is the most professional podcast ever made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're pretty proud.
Something like that.
Go listen to it if you want.
That's
Shameless self-promotion.
Self-promotion. This podcast is sponsored by Closing Day.
By another podcast.
So that's podcasting, and we're really happy with how it's going. It's a cool. It's also fun to just sort of work through some of the learnings that we've experienced and like express them verbally.
Yeah, I think so too.
And so that now, if a client was sitting across from us, I think we'd be sharper when it comes to like. This is what we do. Here's why we should podcast. Here's why you should think about doing a podcast in a box.
Yeah. I also think that we still even have a lot to learn, even though we have a great product already. So, maybe a year from now we'll be doing another episode like this and have some more knowledge.
We've got video, and you can't see on that camera, but we've got like 2 videos going, and we're trying to figure out dual. And your phone memory was running out, so that's probably not even recording. So we've got some things to learn in video editing. And it'll be interesting to see if people watch the videos more than they listen to the podcast, or the other way around. Yeah,
you're learning with us.
Here we go.
You get to decide.
You decide. Click on both, maybe.
Yeah.
Try that.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Is that an episode? What did we cover?
Yeah, I think that
analytics. You can see downloads and stuff in Fireside. Pretty clear too. You can see how long people listen. So if you're like, wow, they must have gotten really bored at this part.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
we got to mix it up at minute 5. Analytics is cool. Website. We're in the process now of deciding: do we want to use Fireside as a website, or do we want to create our own? How much time do we want to spend creating our own? It's like, do we use a CMS like Squarespace or WordPress, or do we custom build something? Custom build seems like it'd be too big of a project right now.
Right. Yeah. Maybe if your podcast was the only thing you did.
Right.
Custom building something. Some money. Yeah. I think there are a lot of different ways to combine the types of promotion that we do here at Pentland Group, like with email, social media, podcasts.
That's another reason. Yeah. Like, hey, let's come out with a podcast that we think people want to learn about. And we're uniquely positioned because once we have the finished product, which is season 1 of Closing Day, we have some resources in-house that are experts in getting things to the markarketplace. Yeah. So that's kind of making it happen. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's kind of overview of where we are now.
That's podcasting, I guess, 101. Are we in triple digits, or this is like introduction to 101?
101.
101.
Give yourself some credit.
All right, Professor Kassi Strong signing off.
Podcast 101.
Right.
Thank
All right.
you.
Yeah,
Talk
thanks.
to you later.
Yeah.